there he is, Coach Robbie.
Hey, welcome. It's Monday, 9 o'clock a.m. Central Standard Time. Welcome aboard Crushing Iron Triathlon Podcast.
February 25th, 2019.
19, I was going to say, let's not. Last thing I want is go back to the 19s. I don't miss it at all. Period.
Really? I haven't been able to keep the 2000 days or like years straight.
Yeah, weird. I don't. I mean, they're all kind of pointless anyway. Ever since, Y2K, everything has kind of gone downhill anyway.
Yeah.
I have no idea what podcast episode it is today because my life is totally in shambles right now.
Oh, that's right. You probably packed away the podcast counter.
It's somewhere. I don't know. I was given a podcast counter to help me keep up with all the podcasts that we do. I know we're somewhere in the 240s. I want to say we're 246.
245.
All right, so I was close, yeah. And we moved Saturday and Sunday into my mom's until our new house is ready in Chattanooga, and so a lot of things here and there. And I am, like I think a lot of triathletes, I'm very much a creature of habit and routine, and this is a bit of a struggle for me. Things are kind of in between. I don't know where things are. I think it's like one of the things that it's so like we never think about that's so minor, but it's just like how you move about your house after a few weeks. Like you could probably walk around your house blind, and you can have your eyes wide open and looking everywhere. And like when you're in somewhere new or you're staying in a new house, stump your toe like every 30 seconds. And I'm like, my toes are going to be broken by the end of this week. But it's all good. Most of the stuff is behind us for now. And we're pretty close to getting settled here at my mom's and just kind of getting into a new swing of things, a new routine. And I do got to say that while it will take a transition period, because as much of a routine-based guy as I am, anytime you kind of uproot things, especially with a toddler, it's difficult. Not having to get on the interstate again is a gigantic win.
That's got to be huge.
It's huge. I mean, it's gigantic. I can't tell you how great it is to just know that I don't have to get on the interstate today, and I don't have to worry about all the crazy traffic and a million people that are invading the city of Nashville. And so yeah, it's good. And the sun is out. It was the rain has finally ceased, and we hope you all had a good weekend. We appreciate you joining us today.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. That how I am with driving in general. When we get to race towns,
I know you're rarely ever grumpy, but when you are grumpy, it comes down to two things. It comes down to the rules and technology that's been implemented in a baseball, and anything that has to do with traffic or driving or putting you at risk for traffic or extended periods of time in the car that may or may not last a maximum of 10 minutes on a race side.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I was thinking about this on my run yesterday, how when I grew up, I mean, car travel has evolved quite a bit, and travel in general, obviously, and we're very transient as people. So, but when I grew up, I mean, people were like lived in the neighborhood forever. I mean, you knew everybody. And then I was running through my neighborhood the other day, and I was realizing I don't know anybody that I live around. I mean, I see them sometimes, and we kind of like talk a little bit, but it's so much different than when I remember. And I think it's because how transient we are in general, and how neighborhoods just kind of, especially like around here, and I suppose it's the same everywhere, but in Nashville, it's kind of crazy. You could have a new house built within the next 6 months right next to you, and then all of a sudden you got two new neighbors, and they're coming from who knows where, and everybody from around here is not sort of from here, so I guess the kids don't really, I think that's part of it, is when you're kids you just sort of meet neighbors, and neighbors don't necessarily want to talk to each other as you get older.
Not anymore, they don't. They're like, just like, I don't want to talk, just shoot me a message on Facebook and we'll be fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it is kind of weird. I remember that's something that I hope we get back when we move. Is, I mean, we knew a couple people on our street, and we weren't even there for 2 years. I mean, so I guess we're part of the problem. But hopefully where we move, where we're going. It's not totally secluded, but it's just one street, and so I have to feel like that would probably help. But yeah, it's connecting is good. And I remember going down and walking down the street, see if old Craig DeBell wanted to come over and play basketball with me and Matt Wallace, and we would battle it out on the hoops court. We had 2 goals back then, but yeah, it is all good, and it is a good time of year to be excited about getting ready to race, or not excited about getting ready to race, which I think a lot of athletes are finding their level of excitement. That's what I kind of want to talk about today, unless you have like a really, glaring, ominous subject that you've been like waiting to unload for the last 48 hours.
Glaring, ominous. Yeah, I've got an ominous subject. No, I think that's a good one because I've been I'm sitting here looking out my back window at green grass, and I have to say that my grass is greener than my neighbor's, which is, I think, a good sign, isn't it? It's psychologically.
It's a great sign for you.
Yeah, let's get some people pumped up about racing. I mean, if that what you're thinking? I had an ominous.
Let's do your ominous first because I let off last week. But
no, I don't really want to go in. I'd rather go into the race one. I just was. I think we can talk about this some other time. But I was just thinking about because every once in a while I get around before the podcast and I'll kind of plop onto some different sites and read some stuff and see what's going on out there in the triathlon world. And I just can't get off this thing that there is just information overload, man. It's like all these articles I read are just rehashes of stuff that we kind of should already know, but we just don't have the patience or the focus to actually dive in to and understand. Like, for example, there's a big article on USA Triathlon or something about you need sleep. And I mean, it's like, yeah.
Shocker.
And then how many times can you read that, and then it's... Or you got to eat, your diet needs to be tight going into the season. And yeah, we know.
No shit, Sherlock.
I know.
I mean, there's so much of these things are just like, I was thinking about that over the weekend too, and about one thing that I read that was, it was in terms of like coaching and stuff, but it's just like, it's how much of everything that we consume or that's marketed and posted and whatever it is to like, or articles to read, like, it's like everybody wants to fool you into believing that like this shit just is common sense. Like, this is all common sense. Life is basically common sense. Like, don't do anything stupid, be smart, and take care of the basics. And if you can do those 3 things, I guarantee you're probably going to come out pretty much okay. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I struggle with sometimes with coaching is like there isn't some like secret, like I don't hold secret workouts. Like, I don't believe my athletes are successful because I have all these secret unknown, training specific epic weekends that make you into a phenomenal triathlete. Like, mainly my job now is just like, forget all of the triathlete.com articles you've read, forget the articles you read off active.com, forget all these other things, and just like, hey, let's make it as boring and simple as possible, and then let's see how quickly we can get to extraordinary results. And that's how easy it is. It's like, but I think that it's society's way of being like, we need to rely on all these things. And coaching, like, if you, in my opinion, you should coach to a point to where your athletes, and you should empower them, and you should kind of explain to them, and they should see how they really should train themselves. They should not rely on you 100% all the time. But to get to a point to where they learn enough, they see how simple it is, they see like kind of the core values of how you should train. And it's not that they feel like they rely on you 100%, but that they want to bounce ideas off to you, or they just want part of your experience to be part of their experience and the things they do. And I think that it's like an epidemic of like how like chaotic and distracting and complicated we try to make everything in life, and it just all goes back to our failures to like just be okay with like the regular same old stuff that works, but it's another sample of our addiction to distraction and always needing like an extra fix.
Yeah, that's the other part. I had information distraction overload is sort of my bullet point. And there's this, I haven't read it, but I was reading about this book called Shallows, and it's about how the internet is changing the way we think, read, and remember. And also it's about this idea that, like what we were just saying about how you can read about anything and the distractions. Like, when's the last time any of us has actually sat in a room and worked for maybe 3 or 4 hours without a phone or internet, and like actually did focused, uninterrupted work? And I think that sometimes that can be training, but then again, it gets back to like, a lot of us carry our phones or whatever the case is, but it really intrigues me to think about actually what kind of serious work we did if we could actually focus on the moment at hand.
The majority of the most successful people do that.
Mm-hmm.
They're not distracted. They're purpose driven, and they have like a couple things that are really, really important to them, and everything else is just a waste of time. And I think the biggest part is like they have a really good relationship and healthy. I think like it's basically you now with the way with how available everything is now. So I'm sitting here in a lounge chair upstairs in my mom's house right now. I don't actually have to leave my house ever. Leave where I'm at. I could work from here. I could hop on the treadmill inside the house. I can hop on my trainer inside the house. I can let my dog outside without even going outside. I can have my dog's food delivered. I can have food delivered to me. I can have my groceries delivered to me. Like, you can purchase whatever you want to just from the comfort of your own home. You don't have to do anything. But the way we live now is you don't have to have, but I think if you want to be really, really, really successful in every area of your life, you have to have basically boundaries for everything. Because if you don't have boundaries with friends, with family, with work, with training, or social media, or your diet, if you don't have boundaries, then you're going to be constantly distracted because you're basically like standing and just letting everything come at you all at the same time. And you're trying to decipher it all. And you can't. So you're not really consuming anything. Because you're not actually able to consume it, and then actually you're consuming so many things you're not able to digest anything.
Yep, and that's the point.
That's the point.
That's the point about that. That's why that book's called The Shallow. It's because we're just captivated by the surface chatter, and we never go deep into our real meaningful stuff.
Yeah, like the headline shares.
Mm-hmm.
Read this weird, headline, man. Share the article. I'm like, you didn't even read past like the first sentence.
Well, a lot of people just screen grab the headline. So look what's going on over here, and then you can't even read the article.
I wish there would be like a news outlet that would get created that would create articles with like kind of not so like insane headlines, but kind of insane to grab the specific viewer. And then after 3 sentences of the article, totally change the dialogue.
Yeah.
And then see how many people actually. I think there was anyway, but we'll get back on topic. But it is there's so many with training, and as a coach, I think there is like an information detox that I think most coaches have to help their athletes go through as they begin to work with them. I was just actually, this got me thinking, as I was just texting back and forth with an athlete a minute ago who we started working together not even a year ago, but when we started working together, he's a very data-driven black and white guy. Like I think he deals with numbers and stuff on a daily basis, and everything he wanted was he needed to be analyzed. What about this? Like, what are the trends you seeing? Where's the data? How's the graphs? How's this? How's that? Every other day, it was some kind of a question about what do you see? What's the info? And then it's kind of, and I was like, dude, we just need to go through like an information data obsession, like detox. And we're going to
Detox.
It's what it is. And it's not going to be comfortable, and you're going to feel like you don't know anything, and you're going to feel like you're taking a step backwards, which is scary because the more information people have, the more in control they feel like they are, which is totally false. And then weeks and weeks go by, and all of a sudden I think he messaged me today, or I saw on Training Peaks, I think this is like his 76th day in a row.
Wow.
Not missing a session. And he's just plugging away, and as no coincidence, he just had like easily his greatest run since we've been working together over the weekend. It was a long run, just zone 2, but it was what we saw in it. And it's just like watching athletes' transformations from feeling like they have to be consumed with busy work info versus actually just taking care of the task at hand. Because we all know people that in training and in life and business and stuff that are really concerned with busy work. Being busy doesn't mean you're being productive. And the same goes with the consumption of information. Consuming a lot of information is useless because if you can't digest it and then apply it, it's meaningless. The same goes for how, for whatever reason, people think that the greatest athletes in the world must also be the greatest coaches in the world.
Wrong.
That's also, yeah, totally. Couldn't be anything further from the truth. And that's like one of the funnier things I was getting when I automatically know we're probably not going to be a good fit if an athlete's like, so tell me your PRs. Like, first of all, my racing like PRs are of no consequence. Now they're not bad by any stretch, but they have no relevance to how good I'm going to be at coaching you versus where my experience is. Because the same can go with you consume information, you consume training, you consume data, because athletes are obsessed with consuming data. But very few of them can actually, A, digest it, and then B, can apply it and deliver it back in a way where it can become meaningful. And the same goes for coaches. Like, you could be the greatest triathlete in the world and super fast, but if you can't explain things in a way where people can digest them in return, then it's useless. I mean, no offense, but Michael Jordan is like would have been the worst coach ever, and he's a horrible owner.
I know, but the thing about Jordan is, like, I was just thinking about that, like guys like him or like supreme athletes that sort of understand it on an innate level, and of course they have, like a guy like him is unique, but there's good athletes that aren't necessarily always loaded with raw talent. And I just think that they have worked so hard at and practiced certain things and worked with their mind and understand their body and things like that, that it's difficult to explain that sometimes unless you've been through it. And they can't articulate it. He's probably like, well, just do, you look that way, you fit, but the people are like, what?
Yeah, because it just comes so naturally.
Mm-hmm.
Then they don't have to apply it to themselves and then think it through and kind of dissect, how things are supposed to go. But the same goes for the same thing can be said for all information all the time. That no matter what kind of information you're consuming, if you can't digest it and then deliver it or apply it in a meaningful way, it's a total waste of time and it's totally meaningless. And I even give athletes sometimes a real hard time when they ask. I'm like, you have no idea what you're even looking at. So why are you so obsessed with it? Because I think a lot of times we add those aspects into life because they help fill a surface level void that we're maybe missing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm really struggling with this. I'm gonna get a power meter. For what? Like, it's not gonna like. Your power meter is going to hop out of its box, crawl over your bed, drag you out, put you on the bike, and make you pedal. So like, I don't know, like, but it's the availability for so many extras we have in our life to allow us to be distracted from the reality of the situation for a lot of athletes and a lot of people and other facets of their life. Is the more info we have, the more distracted we can be, which in like the simplest form is just keeping us away from looking in the mirror and figuring out what really is good, bad, not good, productive, not productive, motivating, not motivating. Why am I not committed? Why can't I be committed? It just keeps us surface level, and it makes you. That was like one of the biggest things I learned when I got sober was that, we had so many guys that were complaining about, like, why don't we have access to this? Why don't we have access to this? Why don't we have? And it wasn't because like they really wanted to like go swim, or they really wanted to like have these nice gyms, or wanted to go all these like fancy stuff that these other like treatment facilities have. They just wanted more things to distract themselves from, because it's really, really uncomfortable to only focus on yourself and the things you need to deal with. But that's obviously was the point. But the more things that you like kind of cling to add in is usually just like keeping that fire going of distraction. Let's just keep the fire going. So whatever information or product or training plan or new race, whatever I can do, let's just keep throwing stuff on the fire, because at least that'll keep burning. It'll look like it's burning, and then I just don't want it to go out, because then when the fire goes out, then I'm just going to be left with me. And I think that's just something that I think we all struggle with as humans. Is just the scariest thing is to just cut down and cut back and look at things in a different way. That because you can't consume that many things, and when it comes to training, not only can your mind not consume a certain amount of things, you can only digest a certain amount of training and stressors. And that was kind of where I wanted to go with the excitement thing. I just had multiple conversations with. Are you okay if I segue into the next topic?
No, I was actually just thinking we should, so it was perfect timing.
Perfect. Look at you, me and you all the same.
I know.
Is I've had a couple conversations, and I think it was sparked mostly by the podcast we did a few weeks ago, which came out to be a pretty popular podcast. You wouldn't think you would hear from a triathlon podcast. It was basically on why it's okay for you not to do a triathlon this year. But I've had a lot of conversations with athletes that I work with and don't work with, and about their level of excitement. And I think, and it's something I've never really thought about it this way before, but going through a move myself and going through basically a bunch of transition in the next 4 to 5 months, and I have other athletes that are going through similar transitions. And I think, like, in order for your like perfect training stars to align, everything has to be at the same level, obviously, in a line. Your excitement, your motivation, your life, your relationships, your stressors, they all have to be at a certain level for everything to line up. It doesn't have to be perfect, but they all need to be kind of there, and in order for things to work kind of seamlessly. And again, you're not going to have a seamless life with no stressors, but I think sometimes we struggle with adapting our goals and our expectations around what actually truly gets us excited. Because I totally believe that athletes go through ebbs and flows, peaks and valleys of what gets them excited over the course of a year. Mm-hmm. And usually where athletes struggle the most, not with burnout, but with motivation, is that their excitement level is X, but their previous race goals are Z. And while they're excited, they don't do sometimes anything, because the race or races that they previously picked, or the training season they previously planned, doesn't match up, and usually is too great, or it's too different to match an athlete's excitement. And excitement is usually a result, or your level of excitement or the direction of that excitement is usually a direct result from your life and the amount of stressors you have and how you're able to manage them. Because we tell athletes all the time, don't tell me you're not motivated. I'll tell you right now, you can't be motivated if you're that tired or you're that stressed. Like, in order to be motivated, you have to have energy. And if you're applying all of your energy to X, Y, and Z, then don't expect yourself to be motivated. And don't again beat yourself up for not being motivated. I think it's one of those. It's another societal Instagram problem where you can scroll through a feed and everyone has an inspirational quote of them, half naked, dripping in sweat with whatever on, and it's get up and crush today, no excuses. Bullshit. I got plenty of excuses, and so do you. And you know what? Some of them are valid. Some of them aren't excuses. It's just life. And so I think one of the healthiest conversations an athlete can have with himself is, okay, my level of excitement is here. I understand that when I signed up for these races or planned out my year in my head, or my expectations or how I identified myself within this year is this. How can I get those to merge together to where I can actually begin to execute on my level of excitement? Because the biggest barrier most athletes have this time of year is a failure to execute up to their level of excitement, instead of paring things down or just not training at all because they're excited. They're just not hour and a half long run excited. They're 30-minute run excited.
Yeah.
They just won't, but they won't do the 100. They won't do any running because for them it's all or nothing. I got to do an hour and a half. I got to do X, Y, and Z. I got to do X, Y, and that's why it's so important to adapt. And we mentioned this on, I think, last podcast when I was talking about the conversation I had with the athlete who was just hating running, and didn't want to go. And I said, I don't care what you do, just do something else. And I I adjusted, because you have to do this as a coach if an athlete is not. Sometimes it's not that the athlete doesn't like something. It's that it's like an athlete going. It's like you going out to eat and you're like, I don't like that steak. It's not that you don't like steak. It's that you didn't like that steak.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you shouldn't ever like a well done steak, just as a PSA. But
it's just a side there.
It's just a side there. But that's where you have to think, okay, do I hate steak, or did I just have or am I just not feeling it right now, or that was just a bad one? So I'm not going to give up steak. Let me just see if I can find a new way to like steak, or somebody else makes it a better way that I like. And so I wrote in a workout that was really simple, and I just said, walk out your door, walk to one mailbox, and sprint to the next. Repeat that until you're fed up. And she went out and ran 2 miles at one of her faster paces and was like, I'm totally shelled, and that was fun. And so you have to be able to adapt. Either your coach needs to help you adapt, or you have to adapt on your own if you're self-coached, and just come to the realization that I'm not doomed because my excitement doesn't meet my previous expectations. My job as an athlete or as a coach or whoever is to find a way to where you can actually execute on your excitement, because that's when you start to get fulfilling, no matter what it is. So find an opportunity that allows you to execute on your excitement. Don't let your previous expectations drown out and destroy whatever it is you're excited about. And I think this time of year is where, all times, because life can change on a dime, but this time of year especially, I think as we get close to racing season and people are seeing certain things materialize or not materialize or get more busy, and more stressed as the races get closer, it's a good conversation to have. And it doesn't make you a bad triathlete. It doesn't make you, somebody who, isn't motivated or doesn't have, a high commitment level. It just makes you smart, and it makes you, it's called being kind to yourself and figuring out what matters most to you and what's going to give you the most energy, not feeling like you're, I've met more triathletes that will absolutely train for a race in total misery just for the sake of doing it because they signed up for it. You get 0 points for that. You get 0 life points for that. 0.
Because not only that, man, it's like, because think about what that means to be excited about a race. When you get to a race, I mean, there's a lot of excitement around being around the people, being around the energy of the race, being around the vibe of the race, and the actual race becomes painful. And if your whole training cycle is miserable and painful, then you'll be like, why did I just do all that to do this? And then you walk away from that with kind of these questions. But if you can build up to the way to actually make that race sort of, manageable, or, you're, like you said, executing on the level of your excitement in a good way, then there's a big win there. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, come on. Training in misery is like, that's one of the things I was talking to one of the guys in the club about yesterday. It was like, I have to really be careful, because you can get excited. I mean, think about the cycles you can go through in training. You can get excited and feel good, and then you can go out, and then all of a sudden you just push it too far. And the next thing you know, the next week is screwed up, and then you're fighting that same old battle again. So it's like the battle I fight with everybody the most is like, pull it in. Go out, have a good workout, don't go too far, don't go too... And I honestly, it's so difficult that I actually caved in on my own advice this weekend, because I felt good running, and I ended up running too far. A little bit too far. I just was like, I'm going to go take it easy. And by the end, the last 2 or 3 miles, I started really feeling my legs in a bad way again. And I hadn't been having that problem at all. Mm-hmm. And I was so mad, because it's so easy to do that when you're feeling good. And it's so hard to get off the bike or off the run when you're feeling like you could go a long ways further, or you could do much, much more. But you know that you can do much, much more, but you just need to do it tomorrow.
Yep. It's funny you said that. I had just had an athlete who's pretty cerebral and it makes good decisions, flopped her rides on her own because she was like, I didn't have it today and I didn't want to force it. I'm just going to swap these around. Perfect. Like, coach's best friend, making decisions that are smart on your own. It's like, but it's listening. It's understanding how we have such an overemphasis on what we think is critical and significant. We can't adjust. We cannot move. It must be done this way. I have to do this race. I have to do this. I have to do... Like, no, you don't. Like, again, it goes back to where we're kind of, chatting about the beginning of the podcast. It was like, quit making it so complicated. Wake up today and if you don't feel like biking, don't bike. Go run and then swap it. It's like I think there's just this huge misconception that we have as triathletes and triathletes on a training plan or coaches, is this that like you must not disturb what is written. Like, regardless of how you feel today, you must do X, Y, and Z. You must not do this. You must do this. And the reality of the situation is, if you want to create sustainability and longevity within the sport and within just your own training, if you're self-coaching, you have to be able to listen to yourself and be okay with that. But you can't listen to yourself if you have a lot of noise. Mm-hmm. If you keep allowing so many things into your life or so many other opinions, like so many people over, like asking for somebody's, opinion sometimes is just like the most asinine thing you can ever do. Because everybody has a different one about everything, and it's all based on their experiences, not yours. So I've always wondered why. Who the hell made you a movie critic? We don't even have the anywhere close to the same preferences and life experiences. How are you going to tell me what's good and what's not? It's totally useless. But the same can go for how you look at your training. Someone's doing this, I got to do it too. Just take a minute. Find out what you like and when you like it, and then apply it, because that's going to be much more manageable and sustainable than force feeding it day in and day out until you end up taking a forced break because you just can't do it anymore, or you're burnt out, or you dislike it, or you're totally unmotivated because the only way you can see making something work is this way. There's no malleability in to form and construct and write it in pencil. It has to be done here. It has to be done this. And if it's not, then it's not worth doing. And that's just totally false. And we have the ability in life now to change basically anything you want to, whenever you want to. But the human nature and tendency to hold on so tight to something with with no willingness to be flexible is what gets so many people into the most amount of trouble in the course of their triathlon season. I must stick to this race calendar. I must stick to this. I must do this. I signed up for this race. I don't really want to do it, but I'm going to do it anyway. I signed up for it. And then, they just kind of half the way through it. Now, again, I think in the context of this conversation, you also have to understand that you can't always be looking for a way out either. So you have to look at your own track record. But to a certain extent, it's like what experiences are you trying to create in your life? Things that excite you, things that will give you meaning, things that will fulfill aspects of your life, or something that feels like a chore or a have to. And as soon as you start thinking about it that way, it's difficult. And I think that sometimes we all have to take a step back and be like, what do I really want to do? And I think a lot of times the battles that we have, and I've had this battle before too, was, I think that you have to have a conversation of, at this moment in time with how my life is, what will give me the most happiness? And that's a loaded question for a lot of people that have, so many different aspects and so many different things that play into their overall happiness. Married or not married, kid or no kid, job they like or don't like. All these circumstances play into a person's happiness. And so I think you have to, again, get rid of all the noise, because usually noise just adds, again, like we talked about, just more information you can't digest that's probably going to skew your thought of what's acceptable or not acceptable for your happiness, and just skew the results. So just bear it down to, the three things that make you the happiest in life. And then, is this race or not race, or this calendar or not calendar going to affect this in a positive way? Mm. And if it's not, then is it really a good fit, or are you trying to make it fit because you feel like it has to be there? And again, I'm not saying this is an easy conversation. However, there's a perfect answer. I'm just saying that you should always be at least open to having that conversation with yourself, and then having the confidence to go with it and be okay with it, even if it goes totally against the grain. As long as you're okay with it, that's all that matters.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about this, the race that you don't necessarily want to do, even though it's on the calendar or whatever. But I think there's some thing in there about how people, including me, like to put those out there to sort of force ourselves to stay on a path. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say necessarily that when I signed up for my first Ironman race that it was, I wanted to do it, but I think at the core is like I wanted to keep going, and I was afraid that if I didn't, I went up to my Olympic and then I was like, I got to keep going. I want to do a half and then a full this year or whatever. And in some ways, like I feel like I've done that, and I don't necessarily know if it's the right way to do it. I've done a lot of things in my life that make me uncomfortable. And a lot of times it's because, as I guess Stolberg and those guys say that, stress plus rest equals growth, or that kind of concept. It's sort of like I feel like I have to put myself in some uncomfortable positions. But like if you've got a race coming up and you're not really feeling it, but you're still committed to it or whatever, I think you just need to shift your mindset on it. Like, okay, let's go about this race in a different manner, and maybe as literally something that's just going to be a training fun day, rather than it's going to be the end of my life if I don't PR it. Because every race we go into, we're like, okay, it's time to set up for a new PR. Mm-hmm. That's how we do it. I mean, that's just natural. I mean, everybody looking at where they've been, if they don't sign up for another race to try and go slower. I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think many people do that.
But
people are terrified because if they can't see my reasons behind this race in Athlinks, they're going to see my result.
Yep.
And if my result is like, they're going to think I'm just getting slower. Or like if I go race on Strava, like I don't know if I'm gonna have enough characters to tell everybody that this was a training race and it wasn't me trying to crush it. I think that's, again, it comes down to how we've allowed ourselves to constantly be influenced by so many other aspects in our life and people we've never met before, or we'll never meet or have a meaningful conversation with,
Or don't care.
or don't care. Well, most of them don't care. You know, they and we let them influence. Like that's like the opposite of the kind of flexibility we were talking about. That's like letting someone else be in charge of your life, being in charge of your, like over your training or whether you're happy with it or not. Like, just who cares? If you care, then then you shouldn't. Then it shouldn't matter about anything. It's your choice. It's you. Besides you and your family, if you guys are the most happy with it, then go for it. And I just think that we've lost so much, so much, I don't know the word to say, but we've lost a approach to training and racing that is that good kind, like I think you titled the last podcast about being selfish, but was about like, what's going to make me the happiest? And if that's not it, then guess what? I don't care about anything else. Because if it makes me happy, then, and the people are the closest people to me happy, or they're going to support me regardless, then I could care less when Joe Schmo thinks about what I've decided to do or what I've decided not to do. And it's just really being comfortable with those boundaries and with the non-expectations or being influenced by other aspects of our life that allow us to focus really on what matters the most, and that's ourselves. Because most people, that's why we got into the sport, to focus on ourselves, like at the core, for something like what again, it doesn't have to be like some crazy your why moment or your it moment. Like, it doesn't have to be anything like crazy story that you think should be like a Lifetime movie, but everyone has their thing. And most people reason for starting to get in triathlon or starting to do some life-changing or life-altering, change, like it was for them. And if it wasn't for them, then it probably didn't stick. But if they did it and it stuck, it was originally at the outset, if it was for them. What do I want to get out of it? And that, I think the basis of what I'm trying to say with excitement is that, like, you started this journey as a triathlete or as an endurance athlete, cycle, swimmer, runner, whatever, to go towards this area in your life, or to improve this area of your life, or to look inside yourself and improve this side of yourself, or to work on yourself, or to challenge yourself. So you did it for you. And the vessel that you chose, or that sparked your eye in that moment, was triathlon. The vessel may change over the course of your lifetime. And I think where so many times we get confused and we tend to force things is where what we're doing for ourselves, the vessel has changed. We're just still driving the old car. Whether it's scaling back from long distance triathlon to short course triathlon, whether it's going from triathlon to just running, whether it's going from running to triathlon, like we have so many options as athletes, as people who want to achieve specific things and who like to do these kind of things. We have so many options and opportunities. And I think a lot of times the biggest obstacles we put in our own way is when we fail to jump ship. Or just park one vessel and hop in another, and so again, I think it all goes back to like truly why you got into the sport and what you wanted to get out of it. And most of the time, it wasn't to race, 5:03 at this specific race. It was to, show yourself you can be committed. Maybe it was to lose weight. Maybe it was to battle depression. Maybe it was to battle anxiety. Maybe it was just be a good example for your kids. And at that point in that time, however the stars aligned and your life aligned, triathlon inserted here, running inserted here, cycling inserted here. And then those probably haven't changed, or they may have, but you're addicted to not getting out of that vessel, whatever you chose. And I think that, that is something that we always have to be open to with the different phases we have in life. I had a guy who texted me a couple of weeks ago and was like, I didn't get into triathlon until my kids were almost all the way grown up. And he was like, I can't stress to you and other athletes that have younger kids or middle-aged kids, don't waste that time. He was like, don't choose X, Y, and don't choose to go on a long ride or run and not hang out with your kids. Because one day, as a lot of parents know, they're not going to want to hang out with you. They're going to do something else. And
do you want to cradle, man?
Yeah. And do you want to miss those opportunities, look back and think, you know what? Yep, that 5-hour ride was worth it. Totally. And again, I'm not saying this in a context of your own life and what's important, and it's obviously it's a delicate balance. It's not a black or white thing, but I think it was just a great point in saying, like, he's like, I just did short course until my kids were grown, and it made more sense. I didn't force it, and I didn't feel like I had to do it. And I thought it was a very mature, obviously, thing to say, and he's a really, really smart guy and a smart athlete, but it was just a reminder of how sometimes we have our blinders on, and that selfishness can come in obviously how most people take the root of the word, being selfish, into you're just not opening your eyes to the other possibilities or opportunities that may still allow you to do all those things, because we like to force things, and we don't ever like to feel like we're in a position where we have to give up anything.
I'd like to have a quick discussion on something, if I may. This concept of, did you do the best you could? I've been thinking about that for many, many years. And I think I know the answer in your case. Maybe that's happened maybe a couple of races, a few races with you. You feel like leaving the race that you did the best you could?
Two or three times.
And it's been recent, right?
Oh yeah. There was only one, but it was all since I got sober except for one.
Yeah.
And that was like 1 out of like 50.
Yeah, exactly.
Versus now.
I have a very difficult time either accepting that or understanding what that means. You know what I mean? So, like, every race I've done, there's always, I think most people are going to be this way, and I don't know if it's healthy or not, so I'm just bringing it up. But you're going to go into that going, man, if I would have just, there's that. And that automatically says that you'd feel like you didn't do the best you could because you left something on the table, either in training or on the course or whatever the case may be. But do you have, like, I mean, we've been sort of noodling around it, but just, I guess, what is that? What does that mean? Did you do the best you could?
Man, I think when you look back on and how I think it always changes too. I think it's one of those things where it's not black and white, it's gray. Or the black and white, the shade of black and white changes over the course of your life. But at the core of it, what did your best look like? And I so many times just have to go back to the most simplest form is that, like, did you just feel really, really good about it? Did it feel good to you? Mm-hmm. And I know that's not like, some like long drawn out outline of, defining your best, but did all of your core values align? Did you try your best? Whatever you want to say that is. Did you put forth all of your effort? Did you have fun? Whatever it is, whatever your core values are, did it check all those boxes, or at least all of them except for like one, maybe? And that, I think, is what, people allow you to say, that was my best effort. Because I think I will always think and believe this, is that athletes, when they get done with a lot of races, like, or they get done with their career toward the end, like they always reflect back on their best efforts, because that's what matters the most. And I have a hard time believing that athletes will attach themselves to, and they'll tell the stories about, I guess it also can go back to like that same analogy of like why Jordan would be a really shitty coach, or why the greatest athletes in the world probably, because because it all happened. It all, like a race, like if it was like your best PR, usually everything just aligned and went perfect. The race conditions were perfect. The temp was perfect. There wasn't any wind. You were in great shape. You had no life stressors. It was just perfect. The perfect day. What the heck do you learn from perfect? It's like, and so many athletes, I mean, I just don't know many that would be like, you know what? My best race ever was this day. So was it your best race or your best result, or was it your best effort? Because those are all different answers. And we learn the most from our best efforts. And it's usually because things didn't go perfectly. And, I think that when the things don't go perfectly and you give your best effort, again, it could look like a lot of different things, but usually it's, I gave the most effort I could possibly give today. And then a lot of times I think it's also, I didn't do X, Y, or Z. I didn't give up. I didn't listen to the negative thoughts. I executed properly. Things under their control. And so I think that, doing your best, is going to look differently for everyone. And I think if your best is always something digital, or a, podium or a race result, and that's all you're going to be satisfied with, then it's going to be a very, like, your best is pretty hollow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think one of the big things is if you have a true perspective on the big picture, and by that I mean, I was talking to an athlete yesterday about, he's pretty much in a situation right now where I feel like he's trained up for a half, but he's got 16 weeks to go before his half. So we put in a new plan, and I said, look, this plan is actually going to back it down a little bit, and kind of almost a little bit of recovery, and then we're going to get back into it. And thinking in terms of every race sort of being final rather than part of the big picture, I think that disrupts some thinking processes, because if you can look at a race and say, okay, well, what did I learn from that, and how much more fitness did I gain from that, and then how is that going to keep going forward? But if you look at the race as sort of like a dead date, at least, for a while, whether it be a half or a full or whatever, if you're not planning to come out of that particular race with the idea in mind that you're moving things forward, I think sometimes that can deflate people. You know what I mean? Like it's sort of a finality that is created for every race, that we don't think of it as part of the process.
It's that, I think, like, I don't know what the exact definition is, but it's growth.
Yeah.
Growth should be never ending. You should be always growing. I think that's also the fun part of having that growth mindset, is that it doesn't have an end date or an expiration date. Hopefully, you're always trying to get better. You're always trying to grow. You're not stuck in complacency. You're not, because you think about it like that. That's the root of so many shortcomings, failures, not tragedies. Some tragedies probably, but it's when you get to a place to where you feel like you don't have to do anymore. I'm good. I've met my quota. I'm in a relationship. I don't have to work on it anymore. I can just, this is it. You don't need to work on your marriage. You don't need to work on a better relationship with your kids. Like, I can just I can just put my life on cruise control. And while that might seem fine for you, guess what? It's probably not fine for everybody else. You get a job. You get the position you wanted. You're like, I made it. And then you you no longer represent the same kind of characteristics and worth ethic that got you there, to get that job. Or the same goes for in training and in your athletic endeavors. Like, you work so hard to get this result, and then again, this is like why you see so many athletes hit a second year slump, is in triathlon and racing, especially when they jump up to an Ironman, like in one of their first or second years, is they do all this work and they put I got this. I don't need to do like this much. I've already shown that I can do this. And so you're done. You've just settled on not growing, or not continuing to work on just doing things better, and just focusing on, like, I don't want to be the guy or the girl who's in just cruise control with my life and being lazy with how much better I can really become, because you're never going to be your best. Maybe that's the answer. Did I learn something? Did I try my best? And am I going to continue to do this? Then sure, then that might check all your boxes. Mm-hmm. But you just can't be complacent with anything, because if you're, they say this all the time about business. It's like, if you're not growing, you're dying. And while I don't necessarily agree with that analogy, but growth can look like a lot of things. And it's all, I think, about just acquiring new skills, or sometimes just new appreciations for things that you should continue to do better. As in, like, nailing the basics, and thinking about little things that really matter to you, and how best to execute those things. Because the amount of energy and time and motivation is going to take you to execute those things are always going to change. You take the single triathlete in 2015 or 2020, the same amount of effort and time and execution that takes him then is going to be vastly different 6 years later, when he's married with 3 kids and a job where he travels. Mm-hmm. So how do you go from balancing the best you can give then to the best you can give now? It's going to look so different. And that guy isn't going to be able to enjoy training nearly as much if he's trying to train with a different life or a different set of circumstances that he used to have. Because he's always going to be working like, I used to that. I've got to stick to this. You're just not being flexible. Again, like, I understand that this whole conversation and basically this whole podcast has been one of those, like, horoscope podcasts where it's just a lot. It's just a lot of information about how things figure out, and I get it that a lot of people like to listen to podcasts because they like exact, perfect answers, or they like things to be, jotted down in a perfect outline form to establish your bike setting zones, to execute this for the next 8 weeks on this specific training plan. And that's how, like, they got their sheet and the pen and paper out. And I apologize if this is your first time listening, you had a pen and paper out ready to jot down the 20 greatest cycling workouts on the planet. We've greatly disappointed you. But I think these are all conversations, that Mike and I have, and hopefully, and I know that any athlete who's competed for any amount of time has had. Mm-hmm. It's what season of life are you in? And are you dressed for training for the right one? Is your season of life winter right now, and you're dressed for summer with your races? That's the best analogy I can give. Mm-hmm. And it's understanding that and being okay with it. Did you uproot and plant yourself to live in the Midwest, and you have but you're still dressing for your West Coast life? It's just all different, and it's just understanding the season of life that you're in and doing the best that you can with it right now at this time, and that's how you should go about it. And yeah, it's a lot of gray. It's very few black and white, but I just think it's a healthy thing to revisit with yourself all the time. Mm-hmm. And it's not an easy answer to come up with. I don't think either. And I don't think it's perfect either.
It's definitely not. As an older, I say that, I don't mean that like I feel like I'm getting old or anything, but I'm getting, I'm getting up there. As we, a lot of triathletes are older. That's kind of part of their later life thing, and I think it's really important to remember that as we do get older, and physical capabilities maybe don't come as easy. You know,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes life growth is staying the same. You know, it's sort of slowing down the aging process or something. That's the way I try to look at it too. It's like, you know, if you're holding on and you're not, I mean, there's a natural life force that sort of works against us a lot. And if you can kind of keep where you're at, I think that's a big win. You know, that slow down everything. And that's part of it. Sometimes, you know, in life, growth is staying the same.
Yeah, in a lot of areas, yeah, because it takes so much effort now to not want to change every aspect of your life all the time, because everybody else is always sampling. You know, it's like being on like the perfect, because there are specific diets that I totally believe are only specifically work for certain individuals, and it's being on that and seeing like all this success and that, you know, it feels great and that nothing is going wrong. And then all of a sudden all of your friends start this new trend. And you're like, maybe I should try that. And it makes zero sense, yet people do it. And it's just, I think, one of the hardest things in life, and you talk about that, you and I talk about this all the time when it comes into business, is like, one of the greatest strengths you can have is the ability to show restraint. And instead of using your energy and your strength or your your motivation to acquire or to do all these like crazy things, so one of the greatest things and strengths you can have is just the ability to be restrained and to say no and to not do X, Y, and Z. And I think sometimes that's where athletes, because of our personality and our nature, always want to do. I mean, because most triathletes, to an extent, do have some sort of an addiction. I think it's always, it's more and more. I got to do more. I got to do more races. I got to do more long. So that fights against that logic of, but I can't just keep doing this. I can't just be awesome at this specific distance. I've got to do more. But like, what does more look like? Does more to you look like acquiring or adding additional material things or distances or whatever? Or does doing more to you look like doing better with what you have and executing those things better than you ever have before? Because those are two totally different mindsets of more. One is more of a, you take the guy who's raced just incredible in sprint and Olympic distance and just absolutely demolishing people and is continually getting better and is really, really great at his craft. I got to do more. I got to go longer. 7.3 Ironman is going to do 4 from this year. I got to do more. Got to do more. Ultraman, doing it. And it's like, that's just a totally different kind of more. Sometimes addition comes from subtraction, but it also just comes from not adding any negatives to your life that might take away from where you are currently. And again, I think it's just something that's really, really, really difficult to do, is to show restraint and to wait a minute. Give me a week. Come back to me in a week. I tell athletes all the time, we're not making a decision today. Come back to me in a week. Come back to me and, think about it, let them marinate over the weekend, and then we can come to a decision. Just don't make an impulse decision based on how you're feeling this very second. And, it's a good conversation to have, I think, with everyone, regardless of what the time of year it is. And I hope that you have gained at least 2.5, maybe 3 minutes worth of knowledgeable conversation today's hour-long podcast.
I think it's important, though. I mean, we're having discussions that hopefully create thoughts and ideas in people's head that they can kind of use or help springboard them into something, because it's definitely, I just don't think that everything's black and white, especially in this world of training. The more you get into it, and I think we all understand that these answers aren't always easy to find. It's just that sometimes something clicks. You hear it a different way, and it's like, wow, that makes sense to me. So hopefully that's it.
that's why I like it, and hopefully that's why all 83 of you that listen to our podcast like it as well, because so many things and
83 million.
83, yeah, right. 83 million overall downloads over the course of the next 83 years, maybe. But that's
the goal, man.
I think so many, or this day and age, like you're always told what's right and what's wrong. You're either Christian or not Christian. You're either Republican or Democratic. You're pro keto or hate keto. It's like you have to be black. It's all black and white. You have to be for or against. You can't healthily and informally have like a discussion where you could make points for both sides. Or to where, well, maybe neither one of those are the answer. Maybe this is the answer for me in my life. Everything now is you're almost forced to make a decision or to pick a side or to, align yourself with something. And life just isn't that way.
Mm-mm.
Like there's no one else out there on the planet Earth that has the exact same life as you do, in the exact same experiences you've had, that leads to having the exact same thoughts that you do. It's all different. So like it all being black and white for a lot of times in a lot of ways is just, it's horrible for who you are as a person. I mean, I'm talking like triathlon now. It's just like, and to be honest with you, it really paralyzes you into a place of no growth. Because once you've committed to aligning yourself or labeling yourself or committing yourself to only this, most oftentimes what happens is you just become totally deaf to any other kind of informative, educational, or experiential thought from someone else that might add a tremendous amount of value to your life. And it is such a huge problem in life all over right now in all areas, and that has nothing to do with triathlon. But
you're right though. The point is, it's like we go all in. We go through these cycles of I'm doing this now, and then that doesn't work, and then you look at something completely opposite because you feel like a certain way because you're burned out or you've gone too hard on something, and then you're like, this person, that's who I identify with, and then you start going all in that way, and it's like don't try to be David Goggins, It's like you can get that influence and inspiration from him, but like, or whatever. I'm just using him as an example. I really love him, and I take a lot of his points, and I just pull things out of there that are applicable to my life, and I try to use certain things like, different little tricks he uses or whatever it is, but I don't try to go run, 8 ultras on every 8 straight weekends or think that I could even want to do that,
Mm-hmm.
It's just that we take things, I guess it's just don't be so literal with every interpretation of ideas or somebody else's plan. It's like, it worked for them, maybe, or they're just, kind of couching it in such a way that they're selling it to you like that, whatever the case. I mean, that's probably more likely. I always think about that as like, really, dude, is this how you do it?
Exactly.
Every day?
Is this how you really, yeah, I doubt it.
Yeah, no, it's just that, it's just like somebody just starved themselves for, basically 2 months, got all ripped up, and then took a bunch of pictures and said, this is how I do it. It's like, who knows, I mean, who really knows the truth anymore?
After they spray paint their body yellow.
Like, how many triathletes have you really seen that are absolutely shredded? It's a tough struggle to get that weight down, you know what I mean? It's to balance the energy demands and with the food and the whole 9 yards. It's tricky.
Let me just get something off real quick. Just because you're skinny doesn't make you healthy.
Well, this is true too.
Just because you're skinny does not make you healthy. It's total garbage.
All right, and we're going to end it on that.
Yep. You can send your hate mail to crushingiron@gmail.com. That's Mike. If you have any other thing that you want to talk about, like tulips and unicorns, you can email me directly, c26coach@gmail.com. You can go to our one-stop shop, which is all things info on swim analysis, blog, training camps, other podcast episodes, a few videos, and then training and coaching packages. If you have more information on that, you can go to crushingiron.com. And we'll come back at you again live with 48 of the greatest cross-training T2 workouts ever delivered on Thursday.
I can't wait for that one, man. Next weekend's podcast. Yeah. And then with the next one, we'll do it fully on transition.
Exactly.
Okay. It's been a great day so far. Keep it going. Thanks for checking in. We really appreciate it. And I guess we'll be back on Thursday.
You better believe it.
All right. For podcast 246. This has been the Crushing Iron Podcast.
246? I thought it was 245.
Next time it's 246.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, here I'm screwing up again. All right. See ya.
Bye-bye.